fans of the Autumn Defense can stop asking, where can they be found? The Wilco side project, featuring John Stirratt and Patrick Sansone, are about to release Here and Nowhere, their first new album in over a decade. And so we asked Pat the obvious question: what took so long?
We didn't intend to take this long in between albums. I think, we were in a place sort of around, when we put out the last album, it was during about a year-long break from Wilco touring. Just kind of happened to coincide with that. But then uh and that was in 2014. But then in 2015, Wilco released another record and released several records,
Yeah.
consecutively. So there was a lot of touring, a lot of Wilco touring around that time. And so Autumn Defense was still playing a few gigs a year, and we did a small tour in 2018. So it was never an intention to put the project on hold, but just weren't leaning into it. And I think the feeling was is that, you know, in a few years we'd come back to it. But then the pandemic happened,
Yep.
and that threw everything kind of out of whack for everyone. And next thing you know, 10 years has gone by,
There you go.
um, but we love, we love playing this music. John and I, I mean, that's how I got pulled into Wilco in the first place, was, through my partnership with John and the Autumn
Right.
Defense, because we started making music together in 99,
Right.
2000.
Right. Is it because both of you are kind of from the South? Is that kind of one of the things that
Well,
drew you together?
Well, we did meet. Yeah, we did meet in the 90s, in when we were both, because I'm from Mississippi, John is from New Orleans,
Yeah.
and John went to college in Oxford, Mississippi, where there were a lot of bands, and he and his sister played together in a band there. So we were just, familiar with each other through the Mississippi independent music scene in the 90s.
Yep.
And then when I moved to New Orleans in the later 90s, John had moved back there. He was living there. And so that's where we connected. We kept running into each other at record stores, and going to see shows around town. And that's where we realized that we were on a very similar wavelength as far as the records we were into, kind of
Right.
the fact that we were both really high on, like, Zombies, Odyssey and Oracle, and the Kinks, and Scott Walker,
Yeah.
and Love Forever Changes was a really big record for us. So this was kind of what we were, the wavelength we were on. We recognized that similarity, and it just wasn't that common really at the
Yeah.
time.
Right.
Now
Yeah.
that
Now
music and those records are very much in
it's a whole
everyone's
genre unto itself.
consciousness. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
in the 90s in New Orleans, it was a little
Yep.
uh,
Yep.
bit more uncommon. So that really kind of brought us together, and we started making our own music together.
Cool. Now, speaking of wavelengths, I think recently you were working on some kind of synthesizer, kind of electronica project that I saw a brief bit about written somewhere. What was that all
Well,
about? What
yeah,
were
I
you doing?
did. I released a record last year, at the beginning of last year, that is a collection of really just sort of personal exercises, creative exercises that I did going back to 2017, when I was sort of I think I was feeling like I was a little bit of a rut with sort of things I was doing, and just wanted to kind of get out of my normal mode of working. And I love synthesizers, and I have a small collection of vintage synthesizers that I've been dragging around,
Right.
for the last 30 years. And, I'll use them like a little bit here for texture, a little counter melody there, and when I'm producing records, just kind of like as little bits of embroidery. But uh, I just had a feeling that it would be fun to lean into them for their own sake, and do
Right.
something that was textural, and not worry about songwriting and vocal performance, and just kind of enjoy. some textural work. And
Okay.
so in 2017, I set aside a handful of evenings down here, right where I'm sitting in the studio, and made these pieces very spontaneously, very, without any planning, without any really ambition other than just enjoying a creative exercise.
All right.
And then listen back to them. So at some point during the pandemic, I was reminded of them and listened back to them and just enjoyed revisiting them. And that's when I thought, you know what, I should maybe I should put these out into the world.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So that
And
so that
yeah, I don't hear much synthesizer going on Here and Nowhere, the new album. It's a very
n-
organic sounding record, but for all I know, there could be something in there. Is
n-
anything that you've taken away from that kind of experiment or ex follow through on
um
the stuff that you're doing with Wilco or Autumn Defense?
that's hard to say. I mean, it's really kind of all part of the same big, experience, really. I mean, You know, I will say it was good for me just in that I think it shook some cobwebs loose for me and just kind of like, like I say, when I did those pieces, I think I was feeling like I was in a little bit of a well-worn groove. I was working
Right.
on a lot of,
Yep.
I've been doing a lot of producing, which I love doing. But I just needed to kind of, I just kind of needed to shake it up for me personally a little bit.
Gotcha.
And
Gotcha. All right.
but it was also kind of a return to think because when I was younger and got my first synthesizer when I was a teenager, I used to love to just put the headphones on and just make sounds for their own sake. And so
Yeah. Yeah.
it was kind of in a way, it was sort of a return
Going back
to
to your roots.
yeah,
That's all right. Yeah.
or part, a part of my musical roots,
Yep. Yep. All
because
right.
I've always been interested in all kinds of music.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, well, let's dive into this record. In addition to John and you, you've got James and Greg part of this project. Tell me a little bit about who they are so that we know
Uh,
everybody,
yeah,
all the players.
sure. Greg Wazorek, otherwise known as G Wiz, we call him G Wiz.
Of course.
He's been with us almost since the very beginning of the project, and he did play drums on one song on the first album, which that record we actually made that halfway in New Orleans, half of the record in New Orleans, half of it in Nashville.
Right.
So we started that record when John and I were both living in New Orleans, and Greg was a musical friend of ours there, and King Coomer from the original drummer from Wilco played on most of that record. But when it came time to make the second record and do some touring for that first record, Greg joined. He was our drummer, and he's been our drummer ever since. And he's a really big part of our sound. I think the connection we have with him and his approach to drums and his musicality.
Hmm.
You know, we we cherish his participation, and James Haggerty, the bass player, has been playing with us since 2007. But again, I've known him going back to the 90s when I first started hanging out in Nashville
Right.
because he was in a band here that he still plays with called Joe Mark's Brother, with Joe Pisapia and Mark Pisapia. Great, great band, great songs. And so yeah, so he came on to tour our third album, and he's been with us ever since. And
All
and
right.
so at this point, we've been playing with both Greg and James for you know a long time, and we have a really nice connection.
Cool, cool. Now, this record was recorded in Nashville at Creative Workshop. 2 sessions, is that correct? I think that's what I've read.
Yeah, really three, but two main sessions with the four of us all together,
Right.
and uh, our friend and engineer Teddy Morgan, who has worked at Creative Workshop for a long time,
Uh-huh.
and it's a fantastic studio. It was it was built and run by a legendary songwriter, musician in Nashville named Buzz Cason,
Oh yeah.
who do you know who Buzz
I
is?
have several of his 45s, I think.
Amazing. That's incredible. I love it.
I have
Well,
like 13,000 45s, and I'm sure there's Buzz Cason in there.
w-
Yeah,
well, that's
I seem to remember he's on a red label, but maybe it was Columbia, but it might be something else.
well, that's fantastic because he really I'm so glad that I got to got to be around him a little bit and work in his this incredible space. I mean, it
Right,
really is like walking back in time.
right.
But a beautiful sounding room and great vintage gear and just, I mean, and for us, for the Autumn Defense, just exactly the right atmosphere. I mean, it fits our sound and
Uh-huh.
our aesthetic like perfectly. And I've been doing production projects there uh for like the last 7, 8 years and just love working there. So it was a great fit. And I knew that if the Autumn Defense got back to making records again, which I figured we would, that that would be the place to do it.
Cool. So the record opens with a tune called "The Ones," which I think you wrote, and features some flute in there, and it kind of sets the tone for the record. Tell me a little bit about how it came about and why it's sitting there in the front of things.
Will you show me how to be here and nowhere like a hidden sea? I can't remember the winter's call or the reasons for the summer's fall. And the ones that were here to show the way, where are they now?
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, it just it felt like a good opener. It kind of just the way the song is structured. Like once we got the track together, and we're sort of piecing together the sequence. And this happens, I think, a lot for people making records. That a lot of times those early, like you've got your stuff that you've been working on, and you just kind of throw together a sequence quickly so you can share it with the band
Right, right,
members or
right.
whatever. And a lot of times those early
Six.
instincts for sequencing just kind of stick,
Right.
or there's a reason that your first instinct is to go there. So that just always ended up as the first tune. And I think it's a good mood setter,
Right. Yeah, yeah.
the way it unfolds, and I think it showcases something that I think we all are really proud of with the record, is that the the record really is performance based.
Right.
We 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 really didn't use any click tracks on any of the tunes, except there's one section of one song where we used a click track because we were sort of like constructing it,
Right.
in the studio. But the majority of the record was done as, the basic foundations of the tracks are live performances on the floor, and I hope that comes through in the listening experience. I mean, I feel like I can feel it, and that song, that was one of the first tunes that I think we tracked. So, we just we were enjoying the experience of being back together after
Yeah.
several years. We hadn't been in the studio together for a long time, so it was a nice feeling.
Gotcha. Yeah. And then the second track, "I'll Take You Out of Your Mind," is a John track that he
Yeah.
sings and wrote. So is there a difference between how the two of you approach songwriting? Would we be able to hear something, or is that why you're together in this band, because there's so much similarity?
Like you said, maybe you're right. I never felt that long for the night. The night you said goodbye. I'll take you out of your mind.
Well, there is a lot of similarity. I mean, there's a lot of, shared, listening time. We've spent a lot of time talking about music and listening to music together, but yeah, that was a song that he brought to the table. And he we both have a real love for power pop, and I think he wanted to do something that kind of got into that part of our
Yep, yep.
personality. Um, and yeah, it, and it felt like those two songs, like opening the record, felt good to us. Like kind of, they both feel very much like, kind of they have our signatures in them.
Yeah. Now, speaking of power pop, Love Lives, which is the other one that you've released so far, that's very power poppy, isn't it? That's one of yours. So just kind of
Yeah,
goes to prove
yeah,
what you were just saying.
yeah. Love Lives is that
Oh,
was
Love
that was
Lives, sorry.
Love Lives. Yeah, that one we did in our second session. The first session we did in late 22. I think we tracked like 5 tunes, and then we came back like the following summer and did another 5, and then a few months later, John and I kind of got together, the two of us in the studio, and put some final touches together.
Love lives in many ways at one time. Love lies in many things. Love lives in many ways at one time. Love lies in many things.
But yeah, that was in our second session, and again, it just it's kind of taking from our love of the Byrds and sort of Southern jangle pop,
Yep.
from the 80s, and just sort of that 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 sort of chimey sound.
Yeah, it seems to be making a resurrection. A lot of those bands from the Paisley Underground are still together or back together again and doing their things. And there's
Yeah,
new bands coming out that are carrying the torch for the power pop things.
it is true. I mean, I have noticed a lot of like chimey, chorusy guitars like swirling around in the last few
Yep.
years, which is great. I love that sound. There's a band called Beach Fossils that
Oh,
I
okay.
really love, and just beautiful intertwining, chimey
Yep.
guitars, and but yeah, it's such a seductive sound, I mean, just I'll listen to the Birds all day long, so
Yeah. And of course, me, since I'm in New Zealand, I'd be remiss of me not to mention the Flying Nun bands like the Chills and the Bats and all those who kind of were part of
absolutely.
that as well. So,
Absolutely, absolutely.
and the Bats are still going strong. I've just gotten a new album they're putting out in the next few weeks or whatever. So
Oh, very cool.
it's nice to,
I remember when we were down in New Zealand in 2009. Am I right about that? Because we were staying in Piha for
yeah,
for some of that stretch, and I feel like there was somebody connected to one of those bands. I think maybe the Chills, that had a radio station at
could be
Piha, like
probably.
or something.
It
I just
was
remember like turning on the radio, and it was like, yeah, that's the guy from the Chills. But I hope I have that right.
It might
So
be right. Well, unfortunately, Martin Phillips was the main guy, and he just passed away like a year or so ago. It was a big blow to everybody here because
yeah,
he was a
yeah,
major mover and shaker, and people
yeah,
just loved his records. And they
yeah,
just made a
yeah.
film about him, as that tends to be the way things are going these days. A lot of
Okay.
documentation. Could you see people making a film about Wilco?
I mean, there's been a few, so yeah. I
That's
mean,
true. It's specifically about yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So, uh, do you think about the legacy that you do, that the band does, that you guys are putting together as you go along? Since everybody's getting older and writing about, I was just listening to the Who's by Numbers album, which came out 50 years ago, and even
Oh
then,
my God.
Pete Townsend had just turned 30, and he was dreading,
I know, isn't that wild? It's just like, yeah, I mean, well, we talk about it, as jokingly, that we're we're older now than the Stones were on, like
yeah,
Bridges to Babylon or whatever, like, when we thought, oh, well, that's the older Stones. Wait,
yeah, yeah,
we're like way older than the Stones were when they were old. So
right.
it's and they're still going,
And
so
of course,
yeah.
we know that Keith will still be here long after we're all gone, so that's something
Absolutely.
to.
Absolutely. And McCartney's out there, like just being amazing still.
Yep.
So yeah, it's an interesting time in this whole thing, because so, a lot of our heroes we're losing a lot of our heroes, and
Yeah.
we're lucky to have some of them still around, and
Yep.
and it's yeah, it's hard not, I think, it's hard not to kind of get pretty reflective about it at this point, at our age, and sort of like as these things are turning, and and in a way that's kind of what, not to, sort of bring it back. I mean, that's kind of in a way what the ones is about, it's like it's sort of about being in this frame of mind of like
Yeah.
looking around and going, well, like so many of the things that were our fixed stars, that are kind of slipping away and changing, and like how do you orient, your inner life in a moment like this,
If you enjoyed this episode of the 13th Floor's Music Talk series, please be sure to subscribe to the website or to the YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook or Instagram, and wherever you find your podcasts. There's a whole lot more to discover.